Combo, stun, and control decks.
Stun.
The angry man will tell us exactly how to classify our decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Control is the hardest one to ever define, but here we are. I'll watch it.
Mid-range, combo, control. These are all words that you might have heard when trying to describe your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, or when trying to segregate your noble playstyle.
Did you just say segregate? What is this diagram? Our powerful metal call, our one-of-a-kind negate, wonderful set 5, our numerous decision points, our consistent setup. Their overpowered one-card starter, low-skill gameplay, insufferable combos, oppressive boss monster. Wow, this is like so meta. I love this.
Against your opponent's barbaric win conditions.
Bro.
But when you step back and really think about it,
this is something you guys need to understand when you're playing competitive games. Everything my opponent does that's better than me is cringe, virgin, sweatlord, tryhard, and broken. But anyone worse than me is a noob and sucks at the game and needs to get better. I am the perfect balance of sweat, competitive, and casual. Above and beyond, you know, above and below rather, that just, yeah, you're doing the game wrong.
What do these terms even mean? This monologue is brought to you by a post I saw on our Master Duel simply asking,
a good post on our Master Duel?
how many floodgates does a deck need to be considered a floodgate deck?
I don't think it's about quantity. I think it's about win condition, right? Very simply. Your deck could have a single one floodgate, but if it's the all-important piece of the puzzle of your deck, I guess you could probably call it a floodgate deck, right? But then again, it's kind of weird to call, like, Shaddoll a floodgate deck because they rely on Winda. And it's weird to call Ritual Beast a floodgate deck if they rely on Protoss. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit more nuanced.
And the comments correctly pointed out that it's not about the size of the floodgate count, but rather the game plan.
See, guys, it's not about size. It's never about size. It's how you use it. All right? See? All right? Am I right? Huh? Ladies? There's no ladies here.
If your win condition is Macrocosmos on legs, you might be at risk of a floodgate label.
Unskilled.
But that got me thinking, where do we draw the line? Is it about the amount of monsters you summon, the amount of activations you
Okay,
go through,
Dyer, I
or
didn't
is
know
it
you were
more about
lurking.
your end board? To me,
That's not a floodgate. Royal.
To me, Flower Guardians is a quintessential combo deck, being able to use their special abilities to draw 1,000,000 cards, summon out 1,000,000,000 cards, take off trillions of years off your lifespan, and end on a board with maybe 1 or 2 negates. I've always
Most
preferred
boring
the
deck in
definition
Yu-Gi-Oh.
of, do I need a spreadsheet to make an end board with a semblance
Jesus
of
Christ, dude.
viability? But I'm not.
That's like the tip of the iceberg for DDD, by the way. This isn't even scratching the surface. This is the easy version of DDD. This is easy. This is like joke DDD. This is training wheels DDD. You guys haven't seen pre-Gilgamesh DDD, okay? Unironically, someone here might have a link randomly to the Road of the King spreadsheet. I'll try show it if someone here finds it for me. Do the work for me, please. The pre-Gilgamesh spreadsheet is, yeah, that's physics.
But I'm not so sure all these weaker combo decks can clear the hurdle of viable. I guess the sciencey part in my brain just wants a critical X where we go from a mid-range deck to a combo deck. But where things really get funky is when we start talking about decks that meld these titles together. Branded and Sword Soul were at one point in time considered to be the quintessential mid-range deck, being able to pump out 3 or 4 negates within a few summons. Then at one point, Konami released Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon, and released Arch Nemesis Protoss from the ban list, allowing both decks to dip their feet into the unholy puddle of stun. Branded also had, like, a Brandillion cards added to their card pool, and
A Brandillion cards. Now that is a description.
also removed from their pool, that constantly ballooned the complexity of the deck and the simplicity.
April made a branded guide? And it's 4 hours long? This is chapter 1, by the way. This is the introduction. This is this is the footnotes, Spark Notes version, you know?
And the simplicity of their mid-ranges. Sometimes the meta calls ask you to put some sussy cards in your deck, like when Labyrinth builds were divided into the Furniture build, or IKEA build, and the Stun build, which would play cards like Skill Drain. This is
Which
also
way, dear
ignoring
lovely?
that despite being a flagship resource-heavy control deck, the citizens of the Silver Castle had no qualms making a deal with the D-Barrier Devil. There's also a long time when you could click on any topping Skystrike
D? Barrier? Monkey D barrier? One Piece reference?
list and know without even reading it that there's definitely a Mystic Mine somewhere in here. It's also entirely
I missed that
possible
card.
to switch your deck's identity without changing.
The good thing about not playing the game competitively, because I do the casting instead, is that I get to watch the game, and watching the game is funnier. And I miss Mystic Mine for that. It was great. You know, you got to like really get to know your opponent intimately, you know, find out their favorite color, what they're up to this weekend as you sit and draw pass for like 20 turns. It was like a nice social event.
Any of the cards. For example, Tearlament was always known to be this really interesting deck that could weave between mid-range and combo depending on the cards that they gambled on, but they never really fell into the whole stun label. That is until everybody started playing Tearlament, and your gadget rank 4 Abyss Dweller went from occasional summon to how do I get this out before my opponent. And that challenges the whole concept of the game plan being important for these labels. In Master Duel, there are about 45 decks that are willing to...
So basically, the TLDR at this point in the video is you can essentially define your Floodgate deck being as your win condition. So it's not about the number of Floodgates you play. But the problem is once you start using that definition instead of the numerical actual amount of Floodgates you play, then you sort of fall into this weird pitfall where you start to refer to Branded as a Floodgate deck. And Ritual Beast as a Floodgate deck, which feels weird because they are very much like combo decks that use like 3 or 4 cards and their whole hand and multiple different pathings and spreadsheets through hand traps. So it's a bit odd to refer to that type of deck as a Floodgate deck, because I would very much refer to Branded as at least mid-range 2 combo. So without being biased towards Branded, I don't think it's correct to call it a Floodgate deck, even though optimally in TCG it is best to play it with Puppet currently. So ultimately, these are just interesting thought experiments. They don't need to be correct, and they don't need to be defined so strictly, because in the end, what really matters is whether or not you have fun playing the game. They're just interesting discussions to have, and you shouldn't really live and die by whether or not your deck is X, Y, or Z term. In the end, like... it's a very interpretive gray area that you could define in multiple different ways. There are absolutely plenty of justifications to refer to Branded as a Floodgate deck, but there's also plenty of justifications and definitions for why Branded isn't a Floodgate deck. So you very equally look at it from both sides, you know. You guys ever seen the classic, you know, what's it called? Of this perspective here? Where it's 2 people looking at the a painting on the ground, and you have a field of vision here, and it's like, well, what number is this? Because to person number 1, this is a 6, but to person number 2, this is a 9. So how do you define what this is? You could argue from both perspectives, both angles are correct. A G, okay, fine, it could be a G, sure. Well, fine. But you get the point, right? Sometimes 2 things can be true simultaneously. But also, to delve even further into that allegorical example, you could probably also potentially look at it and be like, well, actually, there is an ultimately objective correct definition for what that is. Because the source of the person who designed that might have had an intention for it to be a certain number or letter, I guess if you want to go with G. And then both parties have to detach themselves from the situation, look at things objectively, and... what's the word in term? Ontologically understand what it is? You know, the study of what is, the study of something becoming, or the study of something being, like what, this is very like philosophical. There's no need to go into that type of depth here. But anyway, so what I'm basically trying to say is Branded as a Floodgate deck. Keck W. No, it's not etymology. It's ontology or epistemology.
Interesting combo lines
one of those.
Threatened by a maxi.
Entomologically?
I've
never heard of
favoritism
that.
where decks like
Etymology.
GX's Destiny Heroes
And
get lauded
ontology,
for
right?
being able to summon out
The
Skill
study of-
Drain on legs,
not oncology.
Macrocosmos on legs, and Imperial Order
Sorry,
on
anyway,
legs.
watching the video.
Comparatively, just holding a Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo and a few Solemn Judgments might have you at risk of a microaggression. I think my favorite part of the whole discussion is how...
Did he just say microaggression? Oh, I've been the victim of many microaggressions as I have 3 back row behind my fossil dino.
Stun moved from this abstract concept into a deck itself, focused around Fossil Dyna, the barrier statues, and about 5 set.
See, this is, you could absolutely just call this a Floodgate deck, right? But why is this a Floodgate deck and Branded isn't? If you really want to use the term, because like so many of you, probably because of the bias, all of you here said that Branded is a Floodgate deck. So what is the difference between this deck and Branded? It's not. There is no difference. Okay, sure. So this is the same deck as Branded, yes? This is the same deck as Branded.
Cards. Because of course they opened Extravagance.
Fuck Branded.
That nomenclature then became co-opted by decks like Runic when they ran their Runic Stun variant and started...
This was the strangest video I ever watched. The NAWCQ Runic Stun profile, it was like, I've never seen a stun player make a vlog. It was bizarre.
...slotting in their floodgates. Now, I'll be the first to admit, the brain rot hasn't completely wasted away my brain, and I understand why people use these terms. It's much more convenient to say that you're a control deck than explain how the +1 off engage helps you set up your win condition 10 turns down the line.
Actually, you misplayed turn 3. You drew Valor, which was the out to the boss monster on turn 18. If you held it, instead you wasted on combo starter. True. True. Why didn't you have Future Vision?
And when a new deck comes out and you see that they can run Dimensional Shifter, it's much easier to just look at them and go, stun. But I guess
Malice is a perfect example. That deck can run Shifter very easily. It doesn't need to. It's not necessary. In fact, it kind of hurts you a little bit, but you can play it. So what is Malice? You gonna tell me that's anything less than a combo deck? You know?
I guess if we play a game where rules
it's
and
the
interactions
Shifter
are decided
deck, kind
by
of,
your
yeah.
head judge on that day at that time.
But the thing is, if you can play Shifter, or at least side deck it, like, you absolutely play it, right? Because, you know, the Shifter is such a game-winning card against decks that lose to it. So
I guess having a few wishy-washy terms to describe our decks can't be that bad. After all, we play a game with over... And hey, if you made it this far, subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Rants. I like making them, so I'm going to keep doing it. Bye-bye.
All right, sick. Oh, we have a blooper reel.
Size of the floodgate count, but rather the game plan. God damn. Would have been banned for YCS for that.
All right. Go subscribe to Key if you haven't already. Interesting discussion. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, I think is the biggest takeaway, right? Because I don't know why some people get so heated about this kind of shit. Like real just like name calling and arguments and really vitriolic like statements thrown around over like defining a deck as stun or combo or control. Like some people get really unnecessarily invested in this, and ultimately it doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't matter if your deck is a combo or a control or stun deck. Just as long as you have fun playing it, and that's what matters to you, that is the most ultimately important thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's some people get really weirdly, what's the word? Just tangled up with these arguments that aren't necessary. Anyway, yeah, bye. Go subscribe to Key.